Okay, are we all here? I think we are. Let me let you know that we had quite an event with General Miller, and he did say that it's all right to acknowledge that he opposed the effort that took place. And he did not tell the president of that because the president wasn't there, but he did talk to Austin, McKenzie, and Milley, and told them that he had been opposed to the total withdrawal. Is that accurate? Yeah. Okay. Well, appreciate first of all being there. What we've seen in Afghanistan has been, nothing short of a disaster. You've heard everybody say it over and over again. We have a hard time finding words to properly describe how wrong that was. And we want to know why, we still want to know why President Biden left hundreds of Americans behind. That's something we don't do in America. We haven't done before. We need to figure out how things went so wrong, who told, who to hold accountable, and where we go from here. The SASC had our first in-depth briefing with General Miller. It was classified, and I think we're going to be setting something up that we're going to have one that's not classified. It's one that would be very rewarding to everyone. But we heard enough to know that there are inconsistencies between what the administration has said and the truth. Clearly, President Biden didn't listen to all the military advice. I'm even more eager now to hear from Secretary Austin, General Milley, and General McKenzie in 2 weeks. That's going to be on the 28th. That will not be classified. I want to hear from General Miller in an open hearing also, which we'll do. And very likely it could end up being the same one, but probably not. This is just a start of an open, exhaustive, transparent process. We have a lot more questions, and I hope that they have some more answers. I worry that if the administration is so incompetent in Afghanistan, how we can expect a coherent China strategy. Now, we have a list of our members from the committee, and I'll keep them in order for those who show up. Senator Wicker?
Here I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I told him you'd show up.
There you go.
All right.
And I had just said that Senator Sullivan was doubtful, so perhaps he'll be next because he's got someplace to go. And who was correct? That's right. The person responsible for the worst foreign policy debacle in decades and decades is President Joe Biden and the diplomatic and national security team that he put together. Today we heard testimony in a classified setting from General Miller, who had been in Afghanistan a total of 7+ years during the 20 years that we've had an involvement there. Perhaps the most knowledgeable public servant and military person in the history of our presence there. And we know that what President Biden decided to do was contrary to the advice of senior military leadership, such as the general. There's no way to put a pretty face on this. It amounts to the most shameful abandonment of friends in our nation's history, and I cannot state it more forcefully than that. Our actions, our abandonment of our friends in the Afghan security force, has sentenced the people of Afghanistan to a brutal regime that is still a terrorist regime in and of itself, that hosts some of the most dangerous terrorists on the face of the globe. And our heart goes out to the Afghan people, the majority of whom have never seen a dictatorship because most of Afghans are under the age of 20 now. So it is an abominable situation that could have been avoided had this president listened to the senior military people who knew what they were talking about on the ground. How we go forward is going to be very, very difficult. But it's hard to say that the Afghan people will be able to resist this brutal dictatorship.
Okay. That's good. Senator Fisher.
I have to wait until I'm called on. Last Friday in Nebraska, we had thousands of Nebraskans who welcomed home a hero, Corporal Page, one of those 13 servicemen and women who gave their lives in Afghanistan. And this coming Friday, we will have thousands of Nebraskans who will attend services for Corporal Page and keep him in our prayers as well as his family. I agree with all my colleagues that this withdrawal was chaotic, it was a blunder, it was disgraceful. I thank Senator Reid and Senator Inhofe for getting this first briefing organized. I think it's just going to be the first of many that the Senate Armed Services Committee is going to be holding. I thank General Miller for his service to this country and for his honest answers to questions that he was given. We've left American citizens behind. I think you can ask any senator here in the United States Senate, and they will tell you that they have been working and their staff has been working trying to get citizens home, trying to get SIVs home, here to get them out of Afghanistan, trying to get our green card people home. We all have horrific stories about the few out of the many that we were trying to get out, and really who has all been left behind now as well. I had the opportunity during the August work period to visit with NATO allies and to hear their concern about where the United States is going to be in the future. If we are going to be fully committed to them as NATO partners, if we are going to be a country that our word will still mean something. And so there's questions among our friends and allies, but I will also tell you that there aren't any questions among the terrorists, because the jihadists, they see this blunder of a withdrawal with no plan and poorly executed by this administration as an inspiration. They are now inspired. They're seeing their recruiting going up. And all of that puts our country in greater danger. So this administration has failed across many points. Many points. And I think the more we get into learning exactly what happened, who failed, why they failed our military in this country, the American people expect us to do that and to do that job. And I know that my friends up here, my colleagues, we stand ready to continue this process that we are just beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Senator Ernst.
How about Senator Sullivan? Do you have to?
Yes, okay, thank you. I'll be very quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we all came back from recess, and I don't want to speak for all the other senators here, but I can tell you back home in Alaska, This was the number one issue that everybody was raising. I have never seen my constituents more upset, more mad, feeling that the country is humiliated, and asking where is the accountability. And so we are beginning that accountability process, and these hearings are going to be important. And keep an eye on one issue as we do these hearings: the military's credibility versus the Biden administration's credibility, because we are seeing the clearly evolving strategy of the Biden administration, which is to blame Trump and blame the generals and continue to claim that this was what President Biden said was, quote, an extraordinary success. Everybody in America, everybody in the world knows that this was not an extraordinary success. You may have seen this, cover The Economist, Biden's debacle. And it goes into just how badly this is going to harm America's foreign policy interests strategically for years to come. But this is going to be tough for the military, because we are going to ask them to be honest, to keep the credibility of the military, which is very much at stake, as their highest priority. They're going to be asked the questions of what they think about statements from this president and this administration, such as, this was an extraordinary success. Al-Qaeda has been wiped out in Afghanistan. Our NATO allies were fine with the August 31st deadline. We have over-the-horizon capability to keep us safe. Every one of those statements is not true. And we're going to be asking our military members to weigh in on these statements. And I will say, General Miller was asked a lot of these today. And I would say, as expected, with someone with his record of service to his country, he did a very admirable job. But it's just beginning. Those are going to be the important issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Folks, first, thank you so much to General Miller for his candor today. He has provided extraordinary service to our great United States of America. And I know that we have placed a heavy burden upon his shoulders as Americans, and he has communicated that quite well to all of us, and some of the successes as well as failures that have occurred in this administration. So, secondly, I want to thank the men and women that have served in the global war on terror, and we cannot thank them enough. This has been very disheartening as we have withdrawn from Afghanistan. Very disheartening for so many of them. So many of them questioned their service and was it worth their sacrifice. And to them I respond that absolutely it was. And because of their service and sacrifice, our country has been safe for the past 2 decades. Our homeland has been secure. So thank them. Number 3, I do want to thank those that gave the ultimate sacrifice, the Gold Star families. We don't talk about them often enough, but their heartbreak right now with this debacle that's on Biden's shoulders. We need to focus on several things going forward, though. You know, we can dwell on the past, and we need to talk about the failures in this administration and what happened in Afghanistan. But we also need to answer questions on how do we move forward. Because, one, we still do have American citizens in Afghanistan behind Taliban lines now, at the mercy of Al-Qaeda, the Haqqani Network, ISIS-K, and you can name any other violent extremist organization. We have subjected American citizens to their oversight, and we should have never let that happen. 2, we have special immigrant visa holders now that don't have access to a way out of Afghanistan. We have to find a path forward for them. We also have a threat that still exists in Afghanistan. Counterterrorism is a must, but it will be extraordinarily hard not having personnel on the ground over the horizon can only do so much. And so we know we have to step up our game there. And third, we need to make sure that we are continuing to develop our relationships. Just as Senator Fisher said, our allies are questioning our commitment to them in future operations. So we have to repair the damage that has been done by President Obama with this debacle of a pullout in Afghanistan. But again, thanks to General Miller today for his extreme candor and courage in coming forward in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee in a classified setting. There's a lot we need to focus on, but going forward, guaranteed, we'll continue to remain committed.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. And we have 3 more members to make a presentation, and we're going to open it up to questions. All right, Senator Scott.
First, I want to thank General Miller for testifying today. I was during recess. I talked to Floridians all across my state, and they're furious. They, in their wildest dreams, cannot ever remember. I think that an American president or commander-in-chief would ever intentionally leave American citizens behind. I mean, they can't imagine it. They can't imagine an American president that would say the Taliban, a terrorist organization, is their partner. They can't imagine an American president that would leave the amount of equipment behind that they left, that we left behind. They can't imagine an American president that would have information about a pending attack on the base and then watch as 13 American soldiers were killed. No one can imagine these things would be happening. Joe Biden promised competence and global leadership. We got just the opposite. We have incompetence and complete lack of leadership. And that's about with almost every issue that Joe Biden's doing. We need to have a thorough, bipartisan, bicameral investigation. We need to have hearings and understand exactly what happened here. And we need accountability, especially for all the American citizens and our allies that lost their lives or were wounded.
Senator Blackburn.
I want to say thank you to General Miller for his time today and for his candidness in answering the questions that we had. It's important for us to begin to build a foundation for how this unraveled and ended up in such a debacle. In Tennessee, we have Fort Campbell, which the 101st Airborne, one of the most deployed units into Afghanistan. We have National Guard units that have served in Afghanistan. And during August, what I repeatedly heard from people is, this cannot possibly be happening. And who is advising the president? Why is he not listening to the military commanders on the ground? So people are in Tennessee, and I think all Americans, they are stunned that this transpired. They want answers. They want to make certain that this never happens again. And they want to make certain that we have a commander-in-chief who is going to take the advice of military commanders and follow through so that we do not leave Americans in harm's way, behind enemy lines, so that we fulfill our obligation and our promises to those that have worked with us, our partners, our SIV holders. And we want to make certain that we remember these Gold Star families and these men and women in uniform that made that ultimate sacrifice. When in Tennessee we have been so touched, Staff Sergeant Ryan Knaus from the Knoxville area, we lost him as one of the 13. We also remember the 18 that are injured and will have lifelong injuries that they bear from the attack there at the airport. So today is a good start on figuring out exactly what happened and making certain that something like this never happens again, and that the United States government never stands in a position where our enemies do not fear us and our allies do not know that they can trust us.
Very good. And Coach Terrell.
Thank you very much. We all represent our constituents back home. We have in Alabama 5 military bases and 400,000 veterans. And my phone has rang off the wall. This administration has tried to destroy the border, raise taxes, ruin education, crime in the streets, and I've never seen the disgust from the American citizen that I've seen in the last month other than this. You know, we've got a lot of bright stars in this country, and most of them say the brightest is our military, and I agree. They keep us safe. They will not get a knock on them because of this. We are not going to allow this administration to point fingers at our military. I talked to the general that was in charge of evacuation last week in Belgium. He was adamant that our military did an expert job on what happened and getting that many people out in a short period of time because the rug was pulled out from under them, and they got them out. The military for us is a bright star, and we need to remember that. But what I want to know is, was this a political decision from the State House to Joe Biden, or was this a military decision? We started that process today. General Miller did a good job. We learned some things. We'll follow up on that. We'll have the generals, Secretary of Defense coming in the very near future. That will be interesting, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Communication and organization is the key to success. And this was the worst, I mean the worst plan I've ever seen, number one, an organization of evacuation, pulling out, doing things just bass-ackwards, to be honest with you. And then the communication, they've lied to the American people, the taxpayers that have paid for this for 20 years. This administration has lied every day. Now they want to come out and say, hey, we got a mandate on vaccines for these people. You know why they did that? To get the heat off of them. Well, guess what, Joe Biden? We ain't going anywhere. We're coming right after you and your administration because you fumbled the ball here, and we're not going to let the military take the fall for this. You're going to take the fall along with the people that made this decision. Thank you.
Very good, Coach. All right, questions?
Thank you, Senator. I'm wondering, can you shed some light on when General Miller registered his dissent and in what setting? And then in particular, I'd like to understand on what grounds was he most concerned with the withdrawal? For example, did he register concern over the Afghan security forces not being able to withstand the Taliban offensive?
Yeah, well, first of all, that was a closed session. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Yeah, well, first of all, that was a closed session. And he did, as I acknowledged when we first started this meeting, say it's all right to go ahead and say what his position was and who he told the fact that he didn't talk to the president only because the president wasn't there. But all three of his, in his chain of command, were there. And so I'm not able to answer any of those questions other than that one that he acknowledged. Now, keep in mind, what's the date? The 28th? We've got all three of them up there, and that's not a closed session. Okay? All right.
Just
Yes.
to clarify, will you be hearing from General Miller publicly at any point?
It's not scheduled at this time.
But you want to?
Well, I only do because we all experienced the closed session, and I just think he's a star.
Do you think the information he shared today should have been before a public hearing?
Say it one more
Do you
time.
think what he shared today should have been in a public hearing?
No, I don't think so. I think he gets to share what he wants to share. It was understanding to him. It was a closed hearing, so that decision was his.
What questions were left unanswered today that you're still feeling interested?
You mean that came from the session today?
Yeah.
Well, if I answered that question, I'd be saying what came from the closed meeting, which I can't do.
But in terms of the top the general, what you're going to hear in the next couple of weeks? What kind of answers are you still looking for?
Well, again, there are an abundance of questions are going to be asked, and I think that they've been expressed pretty well from our members here. I think that you'd be a better one to ask to answer that question, because you're going to be asking all the questions. But I'm not going to say anything about what happened today and questions that we're looking forward to.
If I could just join in briefly and supplement what Senator Inhofe said, questions that remain unanswered, and I think the American people deserve, are what is this administration promising to the new terrorist regime, the Taliban, that is now in charge of the government in Afghanistan? Do they intend to offer quid pro quos in order to get our citizens out, in order to get our special immigrant visa allies out, in order to get missionaries out of Afghanistan? How does this administration intend to negotiate with this new terrorist government, and how in the world do they think we can go forward on a basis like that? So there are many, many questions that I think we're entitled to ask. We got good answers today, and I frankly think most of what was said by the general could be said in a non-classified setting, and perhaps he will be testifying again as someone with 7+ years of experience. I will say there are people who were more involved in the decision making up the chain, such as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Secretary of Defense, who had direct conversations and offered direct advice that they passed up the chain from people like General Miller to the President of the United States.
Fair enough. The military is talking about doing a review of what went wrong. Obviously, Congress is looking into it. But there have been calls for an independent review of this. Do you support the idea of an independent commission to look into this, or do you think that there's the military?
I would rather go for a review and then see if it looks like it would be necessary to do that. But we got a lot of stuff to cover here, a lot of stuff. And the individuals you're looking at now have been studying this for quite some time. That'd be my preference. Others may disagree. Yeah.
If I may, thank you, Senator. You raised concerns over the horizon counterterrorism strategy, which was proposed before the paradigm has changed fundamentally in Afghanistan. Are you confident that the Pentagon is rethinking that approach and is going to present new options for counterterrorism mission in the region?
Danny, why don't you go ahead?
That's a concern that I had in the questions that I was presenting to General Miller, was counterterrorism operations and over the horizon and the capabilities that are there. I think he did a good job in presenting what is available, both the pros and the cons on them. But that's one of the things that I personally would like to focus on in the future. I think it will be helpful to the Armed Services Committee to have more thorough information so that we can perform our oversight responsibilities in a really inappropriate manner, to know if we do have the capabilities that we need, if we have the resources that we need, again, to keep this country safe, because we know a number of obstacles that our military will face when dealing with Afghanistan, since they are a landlocked country. There's a number of obstacles there, so that's something that I plan to pursue in the future.
Yes.
I just want to ask what your reaction is to the new reporting in Woodward and Costa's book about General Mark Milley reaching out to his Chinese counterpart to reassure him and taking action to limit Trump's from potentially ordering a dangerous weapon.
Yeah, let me remind you when that came out. That came out while we're actually in this meeting that we're talking about now. So I'm not about to touch it right now. But it just happened. There are a few things in his past publications I didn't wholeheartedly embrace, but let's wait until we have a chance to absorb it. You heard it before we did.
Your colleague, Senator Marco Rubio, already called for him to be fired.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, whether you are planning to ask Milley about this report when he comes before the committee?
Well, no, we would be talking, I can't think of anything we won't be talking to him about when he comes before the committee, because that's the appropriate time to do it and the appropriate place to do it. He has come under fire. There has been pointed out, even some asking for his resignation, and so we'll have to wait and see.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.